How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
All right, How to Buy homies, I've got some very exciting guests today. We're going to bring you a real estate perspective from the insiders. This is Mark and Brian, or Brian and Mark, depending on which one is more important that day. And they are realtors that have created a podcast that I found. And boy, if you know me at all, you know why I found it. It's called Raising Real Estate Standards. Brian and Mark, say hello to the homies.
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Okay, so we got to know, you're two realtors there in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the Triad area. Tell us, what prompted you to start a podcast all about raising the standards for real estate?
So let's kind of bring it back to, we're on our 5th season. And so call it 5 years ago when we started brainstorming, and it's still true today. We found ourselves, I'm a managing broker of our office, but also do a little bit of practicing. I found myself answering a lot of questions of substandard agents, and not necessarily the agents that were coming to my office, but answering questions from my agents how to deal with substandard agents, substandard processes that they were having to deal with on the other side. And it's just looking into our market, there was a real lack of leadership. A lot of the great leaders were aging out, and they were being filled with people that were transactional, really didn't care about the process, didn't care about customer service, didn't care about anything. It was just how many deals can I slam through, my business, and the customer service levels is just really just went to the tank. And we found that as an opportunity for us to kind of dig in and trying to fill that void locally in our market. And it was, we started talking about it, and it's funny when you start saying stuff out loud and putting into the universe, how it metastasizes and just takes on its own course.
Yeah, we saw, again, the bar was lowered in the real estate transaction world. And the consumer was just, it was just unbelievable, the customer service and how it had been, I'm going to use the term, devalued. And we kind of saw this progression of, okay, if we're so bad, there's going to be other things and other, let's call it, platforms that come into the market that try to take what we're trying to do. So we were like, if we're going to try to keep this thing going, we've got to really get out there and try to educate the agents from that standpoint, get them to focus on bringing their standards up so they can, help the consumer.
That is so poignant, and especially for today. Now, those of you listeners out there who are potential first-time home buyers and you're trying to figure out exactly where to go, like any industry out there, there are the turn and burn factories that are playing the numbers game. And then there's the great customer service. And what Brian and Mark try to help us do is they're trying to help everyone within the industry reach up their standards. Because I'll interpret for you. Did you guys see the news this morning, what Rocket's trying to do? Rocket Mortgage is trying to become Rocket Mortgage / Zillow all in one.
Oh, yeah.
They are trying to be a one-stop shop because of, you didn't say bad reputation, but I inferred that a little bit. There's the unfortunate vibe out there that realtors are bringing in and just shoving you into a home, and that's unfortunate. So let's turn to the positive side of things just for fun. I want to get deeper into the details of everything that you guys have done, but let's start with some tips. So you're out there talking to agents and helping them level up their game. What are some of the tips that you're giving to the buyers? And then what are some of the tips that you're giving to the agents who might be out there helping first-time home buyers for 2025, since who knows what's going to happen this crazy year?
Yeah, so one of the things we focused on for real estate agents is be a professional. Be a professional, take action. That's going to set you apart from everybody else out in that market right now. And you're already starting to see agent count starting to go down. And the amount of transactions has declined over the last 2 years. I think they say it's going to be fairly flat this year, but that's the difference. And if you're a professional agent, if you go out there and actually act like you are that's your job. You're doing it. It's not just a side hustle. It's not just, hey, I'm going to do this part-time and my neighbor may want to sell something or my sister may want to sell something. If you're actually going out there and doing your job and being a professional in this market, you're going to succeed. And that's one of the messages we've really tried to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other big thing is that is in a transactional world, which we've all turned into. I mean, everybody, loves Amazon, right? They're the first place they go to look at prices, look at ideas, whatever, and they give them a pass on a lot of stuff because it's so impersonal, right? There's Amazon and a person on the other end. It's just it's a box that we start to peck at on our computer. And so we give them a pass on a lot of, bad things that they do or inadequate things they do because there's not a human there. And really the biggest part of the process with the agents is empathy. The ability for us to sit down, talk to, pick up the phone. You want a tip? Here's a tip for real estate agents. Pick up the phone and talk to the person on the other side versus just sending text messages and impersonal communication, because you really get to dial into the why am I doing something and what are my fears, because as real estate agents, we're solving problems, right? We want to solve problems before they exist. We want to cut things off so that the stress for your listeners being first-time home buyers, there's a lot of stresses that go into purchasing a home. And so it's our job to predict what those stresses are, predict the things that are going to happen in their world, and eliminate them or reduce the effects on the customer, the purchaser, so that they have a decent experience. Possibly even a really good experience. I mean, but at least a decent experience in a very stressful thing in the process. So far as buyers are concerned, don't take the first person that you come across that has a real estate license as the only person you have the ability to deal with. Have conversations with them. Before you go pick, I know they all want to go get in the house, look at the house, because that's the sexy thing about buying real estate, going in and looking at houses. But I urge you to have a few conversations and just do you vibe with that person that you're talking to? Because if you don't, move on. There's someone else that you're going to vibe with in your market that's going to be able to understand you and understand your needs to be able to really make it a positive experience.
I would also say too, for your first-time home buyers, David, that again, taking action. Don't be afraid of the interest rate. Don't be afraid, of inventory shortages. Don't be afraid of things may go down in value, which I don't believe they're going to. Don't be afraid of all these things. That's what are keeping so many people on the sidelines. And when you are kept on the sidelines, you're losing that ability to even get in, possibly in the future, to build this wealth.
Absolutely.
I say a lot on the podcast, stop trying to time the market. Time in the market is going to be your friend. I talk about low inventory so much when people talk to me about a bubble or a crash that my podcast producer made what in the radio business they call a drop. And it's a silly sound of like 500 people saying low inventory, because I say that's the only thing that's affecting everything right now. Therefore, if we're going to catch appreciation, even if it's mild appreciation, then sooner you're in, more you're going to make. Not to mention the fact that everyone's paying too high a rent. So it's a rent replacement strategy, which, like you were saying, it's not sexy, but it's a long-term strategy and a change. When you're talking to these agents about becoming relational and not transactional, for the first-time homebuyers who are getting into that next level, what are some of the things about the transaction that they should be looking for from their agent? What are the other things besides just interest rate and price? What are the actual duties of a first-time homebuyer agent? Kind of expand on that empathy you were talking about. what are those goals and the discussions? And then what are the nitty gritty of what an experienced agent can do versus someone who is a side hustle part-timer?
On the empathy side is important. I think that's a learned trait. I think that's also innate. Some people are good at it, some people are not. But time in the market, not just as an owning of a property, but time in the market as a real estate agent is something that is invaluable. And so real estate agents that are doing this on a part-time basis are not getting the experience that full-time agents are that have been doing it for a period of time. Just the knowledge of the local markets, local building codes, what makes sense, what doesn't. Walking through a house and being able to identify those money pit things as a first-time home buyer that you don't want to have to deal with. And first and foremost, would they be uncovered by a home inspection? Maybe, possibly, probably. But if your real estate agent saw something as you're walking through a house, you could avoid even getting to the point of spending excess money on something that might be a deal breaker for you before you walk into it. So knowing that the person on the other end understands that, but then also has the ability to deal with you and how you want to talk, how you want to express yourself, how they express themselves to you, so that it doesn't make it scary, but also inform you in a pretty poignant way to say, look out for these things. Maybe this isn't the right one, and move on to the next one. Versus someone that says, "Oh, I like the way this house looks. Well, fantastic. You want to put an offer on it?" That to me is and I see that all too often. I see a lot of agents that literally, will walk into the house with their phone in their hand, doing 2 other transactions, not even looking at the house. The buyer the first time buyer expresses any interest, and they're like, okay, fantastic. We can do the paperwork. We'll go back to my office. I'll email it to you. And that's the extent of the conversation. And that's not okay. To me, that's not okay. That's not professional. That's not forward looking. That is not raising the standards of anybody. That's actually diluting our profession as we look forward.
Yeah, I'd say education and expectation. Education from a standpoint, like Mark said, a first-time home buyer has never done this before. They've been renting, or they haven't, or they've been living at home, one of the two. So they've never really done this before. And this is most likely going to be the largest purchase they've ever made in their entire life. And it's important for the real estate agent to understand that. There comes your empathy there. Yeah. But just the education of there's differences. There's differences in living in a rental unit or an apartment or whatever versus what you have when you purchase a house. Mainly maintenance. Maintenance is a huge piece from that standpoint. So education from that standpoint. And then expectation from a standpoint of, like Mark was saying, a first-time home buyer may need to go a little bit slower. It may, you may have to answer more questions that come your way. And if you're impatient and if you're just wanting to move through because you're trying to get the transaction done, there's going to be a missing of expectations there. So those are my 2 things.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff. It was really interesting. I started the podcast, How to Buy a Home, and I got deep into, how to negotiate during bidding wars and what to do with an appraisal and how to do your home inspections. And the longer I went along, the more I realized the largest part of buying a home is like what Mark and I think you were talking about too, Brian, it's the interview process. It's finding your team. With you guys and your mission to raise the industry levels. I mean, we realtors are asked all the time, what's going to happen with interest rates in the market in 6 months? Let's do the same fortune teller stuff with the industry. Most realtors or most buyers and sellers out there, a lot of them don't know squat or care about all the shakeup that happened last year in our industry. What do you guys think? What's the future for real estate, and what's the best things that we can be looking for as far as the people who are serving the people who are looking for help?
I think the future of the industry is bright. The future of just real estate in general is bright. Simple economic supply and demand. We have a growing population base throughout the country. They're not making any more land. So simple as that. that's going to drive appreciation. I know there's a lot more details into that, but that's the simple way of looking at it. From a real estate agent standpoint, you're finally seeing a decline in numbers, and that's going to be the majority of your part-timers, let's call, or non-professional agents is probably a better way to look at it. There's going to be less of them. And then therefore more of the market is going to be driven towards more of the agents that are in here for the long term. So it's going to be good from that standpoint. A professional agent's share of the pie is going to get larger.
Yeah, and I'll take it a step further. I mean, equate it to we're in the middle of the transition, just like the stockbrokers did 20 years ago, right? The brokerage business 20 years ago was a smoke-filled room. You had to go to the stockbroker to be able to buy any stock, and they had a monopoly on the equities market, right? Now with all the different platforms, you name them all out there. There's 20 of them out there that allow every individual to go purchase stock. Right now, you can do it right now at $1 a trade. It forced the industry, it forced the professionals to get better. And what happened is now those stock traders are either out of business or they're certified financial planners, and they're providing uber great service. And what's happening right now in the real estate market is kind of like the beginning phases of that, where the ability to purchase is going to become a little bit easier given technology, given other things, but there's still going to be the need for that expert guidance and that person that's going to make this, help someone make a decision versus just looking into a square box of your computer and hitting a button to say buy. Your biggest investment ever. So are there certain consumers that can go out and do this on their own? Absolutely. And there shouldn't be a reason for those folks to be able to do that, to be able to make that purchase if they want to, using their own expertise. But most people that are buying real estate aren't like that. And the need for the professional advice is only going to get more intense, and we're going to have to get better to be able to service those people. And I think you're going to find that the compression of the number of agents, as Brian mentioned, is going to force agents to get better at their craft versus for the longest time, it's always been said, even a turkey can fly in a hurricane. And for a long time, if you had a real estate license, you could make six figures just by, coming in and punching the clock. Those days are gone. And so for those that are going to want to do well in this business, you're going to have to get good. Bottom line, you're not going to be able to make a really good living in this business unless you're good.
On the podcast, when I talk to people about trying to find their guides, there are a lot of people out there. I call them door openers and order takers. Yep. You got your door openers on the real estate side and order takers on the lender side. That's why I wanted to reach out to you guys. It was just, I can't even remember. It was one of my unicorns who told me you got to listen to these guys' podcast. And I listened to your podcast, and then I just recently heard your 2024 best of, which had all kinds of great information. Looking back for yourself on 2024, in taking your own personal time out to, have this mission to just make sure that people are doing the job better. What were some of the things from 2024 for you guys sitting back and producing this podcast? What were some of the things through the podcast, talking to people, whether they were lenders or other realtors, that were some of the aha moments that you think are going to be helpful for the people buying and selling real estate in the next few years?
As complex as this purchase is, as equally complex as this business is, for those that, a lot of your listeners, how complex the back end of our business, they don't care. I get that. But as complex as it is in their world, it's also complex to run a real estate business as an individual agent, as a brokerage. Honestly, it's about simplicity. It's about getting down to the basics. All that complexity can literally get out the door. It is back to basics. It is business 101. It is people 101. It is, I said it at the beginning, it is stopping, taking a moment in the fast-paced world that we're living in to listen, to understand, and to respond. And that goes on everybody's side. That is true for the agent, that is who our consumer of our podcast is. It is true for the consumer of your podcast, which is first-time homebuyers. They need to be patient, take time, listen. Don't go into it with all the answers in the world. And then they need to be inquisitive. They need to ask questions. And then really take all of the information that they have received and then be able to make the best decision. But the biggest part of this, as we all know, and you've said it, time in the market is not timing the market, it's time in the market. So many first-time home buyers in whatever market that they're in our market, it's really tough for first-time home buyers. It's tough for a lot of people, a lot of first-time home buyers in a lot of markets. Do what you can to get into the market. Do what you can to get into that first house, because that first house is a catapult to a lot of options 4, 5, 10 years down the road, because the money that you're going to be able to acquire, the equity that you're going to be able to build, that is going to give you and your family a lot of upward mobility that you will never get in just about any other investment or vehicle out there. So take time, be patient, and ask questions.
Yeah, but take action. Take action. That's something that I think we saw a lot in our podcast over the last year. In order to progress, you need to take action. You can't sit here and watch everything happen in front of you. So like for your listeners, again, going back to don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Take action. If you're not even ready yet, go do the things it takes to get ready. Yeah. Make that your goal. Home ownership should be your goal. We did a podcast this morning about the dream of home ownership, and that is the key. Everybody should be able to have that dream to get into that house.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And with the average age hitting 38 last year, it's quite apparent that there's a new loud mantra out there, and there are people that are getting scared, and there are people thinking they might have to rent forever. So a lot of times when I get real estate professionals in, I like to ask them the question, if you were dealing with your own children or somebody that was much more to you than a customer and they were 23 years old, what advice would you give them about the home buying experience as people that are making it a mission to raise the standards? What would you tell from the buyer side? These are the things that you may encounter, and these are some of the things that might give you a leg up.
I'd say the first thing that comes to my mind is gracefulness. Be graceful. At the end of the day, and the reason why we're doing what we're doing is we want to be better. But unfortunately, there are going to be hiccups along the way. So when you're going through this process, know, whether it's your agent you're working with, the people are on the other side, whatever, everybody's in this thing to get to the same end game. Nobody's trying to maliciously take advantage of someone else, for the most part. So just being graceful over the mistakes that may happen, I think that's a big thing for someone to take away.
Yeah, and preparation. I can speak to the North Carolina market is a very hot market. We are a net importer of people. Not all markets can say that. They've done a housing study in our market, and we need close to 750,000 new units of homes by 2029 to even reach the capacity of the incoming population growth plus business growth, which ultimately is understanding the pace of the market, where you're in. If you decide to get into this game, ask your agent what the pace of the market is. What do I need to be prepared for? And then make those preparations. Have your ducks in a row. Whether it be deposits, we have due diligence fees here in North Carolina, but whatever it is that are going to affect your offer as you decide to make that decision to make that jump, be prepared. Be ready to jump when the time is right, and that just comes into setting those goals, as Brian said, doing what you need to do on the front end, getting the answers that you need, and then ultimately pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Worst things that happen is you buy a house. The worst thing that happened is you get your offer gets accepted and you buy a house. And there might be some things in that house that aren't what you thought when you bought it. Well, guess what? You're in the real estate game now. And sit there for long enough, and it's going to start paying dividends. And so take action. Don't be afraid of the outcome. Don't be afraid of all the things that could go wrong. Look at all the things that are going to go right, because there's a lot more right things than wrong things when it comes to real estate ownership.
Yeah, I had somebody tell me one time, you can never lose in real estate. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, so preface that. But you can never lose in real estate, because even if you make a bad deal, if time is on your side, you'll always get it back.
That's right.
And you hit the nail on the head with that one, where the preparation is something that can help you have the confidence to go ahead and make that leap.
Yep.
It's great to understand and hear all these philosophies from, three professionals on microphones right now. Listeners out there, don't miss the fact that, you do the preparation with your team. That way, when you make the move, it's not just a single opinion. It's yourself plus people who've been doing this all the time and can offer all those years and decades of expertise. Doing all the shopping on your own and then just calling somebody to hit the buy now button on Amazon, could be the way where you end up with that money pit like you guys were talking about. One of the things that gets really interesting when we're talking to first-time buyers, especially people who are incredibly analytical. Now, you're talking about listening and empathy. What are some of the things that go into the buying equation beyond just the finances? When people are looking to buy a home, what are the other factors that become part of this gigantic decision in their life?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is where you are as a family unit, whether it be a single person or whether it be a family, whatever your situation is. What the question I always ask is what are the possibilities of you needing to be able to sell this property in the next 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, and if you are in a upwardly mobile, if you're an upwardly mobile person where new opportunities are going to present themselves, and you need to know that. And the reason I say no, not that you shouldn't enter the game, but you should be very judicious about where you enter the game. I would be hard pressed if I knew someone is a very upwardly mobile, that somebody move out of the marketplace in a short period of time, to put them into a brand new construction subdivision where there's another 1,000 units to be built, and they may be putting their house on the market to compete in 2 years, and that builder may still be there, and that can put you in a tough situation. Those are questions that you need to ask, and then what is my appetite for repairs? If I'm have absolutely no handy skills whatsoever, then I'm not going to go look at a 1920s house. I don't care how updated it is. It's going to have a lot of things that go wrong because it's a 1920s house. The things inside the walls were 1920s for the most part. So those are things you ask yourself of who you are. That's finding the right property. And I think that's a lot of this is just dialing in who you are, what your skill set is, what your appetite for those maintenance items that is kind of the big ticket piece that most first-time homebuyers have never had to deal with, that you just have to ask yourself, what are you capable of? What are you financially able to do? And then what do your skill sets have to have?
Yeah, I would add to that because, and I don't know how it is in your market, David, but it's been you had to pull the trigger quick here, and it's slowed down a little bit, but we're starting to see the multiple offers and some of that again, and it's probably going to get to that pull the trigger quick again. And the point I'm trying to get to your listeners is from what Mark was saying, take the time to think about those things, because I'm now starting to see people who didn't take the time, bought something 2 years ago, pulled the trigger quick, and now they're wanting to sell again because, hey, it's not exactly where I wanted to be. I wanted something else and this, that, and the other. And then they're doing it with the thought of, oh, we've had this huge appreciation run up. I can now sell my house and I can make money on it. But a lot of times it's not the case. They're breaking even at best.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big point, is really think about if this is what you want.
Could not agree more. And homies out there listening, that's the difference between a door opener and a professional that wants to have a relationship with you for years and years. Buying a home is not a single push a button Amazon purchase. to try to get the best deal, where you're comparing all the items at the bottom of the page. Buying a home, you guys talked a lot about empathy, but you also talked a lot about listening.
Mm-hmm.
The understand that DIY is such it because it's crazy. I'm in Southern California. We don't have a lot of 1920 homes, but we do have a few. And it is very interesting. And people need to understand, what are you in there for? You want to work with a realtor and a real estate team that is going to listen to everything that you're trying to do beyond just the purchase of the house. That upwardly mobile nugget that you talked about is fantastic. It's something that I find a lot of people, especially millennials, it's one of the reasons why they don't buy. I understand that, but only if you have looked at, okay, if I buy this house and I put this much down and I do get a job transfer in 2 years, what would this home rent for right now?
Mm-hmm.
And then could you actually start the beginning of your wealth empire with a puzzle piece that if you got to move, you got to move. But the concept of paying $3,000 of rent and spending $36,000 a year for 1, 2, or 3 years without even exploring the options with someone that's going to ask you all these long-term questions, that could leave this huge, like you said, this chip in the game on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I think it's, you hit on something that is super important, and I'm sure you've talked about this a lot. And it's that taking that real estate agent that takes the time, that's not that door opener person, because ultimately those that are relationship driven agents, those that are going to be there to listen, they're not in it for this transaction. Let's just be honest. This transaction is going to make me this much money. If I do a really good job for you, I'm going to be your go-to person to help you along the way. And you want someone that's going to be there, that's going to stand next to you during your home ownership journey. You're going to call them. You're going to say, hey, I got this going on. What do I need to do? Hey, what's my pricing? What's everything look like? You've developed that relationship with that agent who has that mentality. Guess what? They're going to stand behind the product that they recommended you buy, because they want to either A, help you sell it at some point, B, you're going to be so gracious, they were so gracious with the transaction that you're going to refer all your friends and family. So this little bit of a commission that they made on helping you buy this first house, what the relationship agent is looking for, the relationship pie, which is probably 15, 20 times that piece. And that comment goes to your consumers of your podcast, plus my consumers of agents. You make a lot more money being a relationship-driven agent over the long period of time than you do turning and burning and not being there for the people.
Yep.
I talk about that, but it's so interesting for you to say that. You know, a lot of times people come to my show and they're looking for the insider tips and the advantage. There's a great insider tip. Take advantage of a relational realtor.
Absolutely.
Take advantage of the fact that you're going to get $1 million service. I've only had one podcast interview that I called sexy, because it's not sexy oftentimes to buy your first home in this unaffordable climate. But she was a girl who bought something, I think it was for like $197,000 in Portland. And the agent gave her $1 million service. But she did that in 2020 because she was one of the people that I told, get out your hazmat suit and go for it. And she could barely afford the little condo. Well, I interviewed her last year, and that same agent sold the condo and then helped her buy $200,000 and $300,000 home. So you as the buyer have the opportunity to take advantage and get multi-million-dollar service at what can turn out to be minimum wage sometimes for the buyer's agent, because it's not that single transaction. It's the life of what you're doing.
Yep.
And then that works two different ways. The only way that works is if the agent knows what your life goals are, which ultimately leads to a better strategic plan for what and how you purchase for that first purchase. That's amazing, Mark. And you're right. That's good news for the buyers. I'm giving you the secret how to take advantage of these people. And it's good news for the agents that you guys are talking to. Hey, go ahead and work like that. You're just, you're sowing the seeds, baby.
Yeah,
right.
And I want to add something there too. When you're talking about the $1 million service, and I'm gonna try to do this without breaking any rules. So
wrong show.
Yeah. So your listeners need to know that you get what you pay for. with all the things going on in the commission world and our world, your people need to understand you get what you pay for. You know, $1 million agent is going to require a little bit more in commission. So I think that's really important for your people to understand. Don't just stop at where's the cheapest going to be.
Penny wise and pound foolish is not something you want to be in this business when you're making that ultimate largest purchase of your life.
On this podcast, we've talked a lot about, I actually got so frustrated one time. I said, you're jumping over a penny. Yeah. You're jumping over a $20 bill to pick up a penny. I actually had one person who reached out to me, and we had a recommendation for someone for them to interview in their area. And they said, no, I'm going with this guy from Home Depot because Home Depot's offering me $650 off the home inspection if I use their recommended agent. I see people do that when they're hiring their home inspectors. Yep. You know, I'll give them 3 or 4 different home inspectors and they pick the one that's $100 less.
That's Darwinism.
And I'm like, oh my Lord.
That's Darwinism. So, guys, that's Darwin. That's survival. Guess what? You're going to get eaten up. That's survival of the fittest. You make these decisions. I say this all the time. People that are buying houses are adults. They make adult decisions every single day. But guess what? When you make an adult decision, you get adult consequences. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the adult consequences are not what you thought they'd be.
And, you know, I just had, there's an incredible podcast. I reached out to these 2, they call themselves the real estate mums. They're real estate agents in Australia. And they have a completely different first-time home buyer process over there with the agents and commissions and how it works. And she just reached out to me and sent me an article asking me, hey, we're talking about potentially changing the way commissions work here. And she wanted to know, she assumed that the sellers were now paying a lot less. And that meant that the buyers were picking up the difference. And I sent her the stat to show her that although I have to be careful about this too. The statistics say that so far the sellers are still paying most, and in some cases all, of the fees for the buyer's agent. That's always been the way that we do things. I think what you're talking about, Brian, is making sure that if you go out and you work with someone in today's day and age, you have to sign a contract to even go in the door. Right. If someone tells you, I'll open all these doors for you for 1.5%, or, you know, fantastic, you just hired a door opener. Mm-hmm. You did not hire a long-term planner, like you talked about with the stockbrokers, a certified person. You didn't hire someone who's in it for the long haul, and you certainly didn't hire someone who's going to understand everything about negotiations, bidding wars, inspections, appraisals, mortgage interest rate buydowns, everything that could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars so that you could save $1,000 or $2,000. Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful point.
Yep.
And I won't belabor it anymore. I think the last thing I want to ask you guys is, being the people who are out there being champions, where some weird dude found you and said, I want you to tell everybody all about you guys raising standards. What are your hopes and goals for 2025 with real estate standards moving forward?
We want to take one step at a time. You know, we knew when we took this on, it was the big elephant, right? It's the big elephant, and we knew we weren't going to make huge changes overnight. So anything we can do just to make better, get better, keep increasing the bar, keep moving the bar up. That's our goal. That's all we want to see. I don't think there's any one thing we're looking to see from our podcast or stuff we're doing, other than just let's get a little bit better. Just get a little bit better.
Incremental change, but big things come in small increments. Mm-hmm. You get a few people to start making those changes, and then the people surrounding them are necessitated to make those changes, then you get more people to make a few changes to up their game, and it's a small snowball. And right now it's a snowflake, and we're trying to push this. We're trying to make a snowball to be able to push it uphill. We understand that's the game that we're in right now, but ultimately providing a little bit of knowledge, if it helps one person, one home buyer, one agent make a little bit better decision, take a pause to say, should I or should not be doing X, Y, Z? Do I need to give it a little bit more thought? That's where our win is. And our podcast, David, when we first set out, we have this goal of raising standards, but it's also just a full disclosure. Brian and I are brothers. We own multiple businesses together. Our podcast is our ability to get on and just vent and unapologetically just throw crap out in the audio world and video that allows us to get through the day and make a little bit of sense of the crazy world we live in every day. And we appreciate the opportunity of coming in and throwing some stuff against the screen with you as well. So thank you.
Well, so if you're out there and you're a real estate agent or someone looking for real estate advice in Greensboro, it's the Mann brothers. And I still can't. That was one of the things that intrigued me the most. You said it's an opportunity for you guys to get together and vent, and I was like, brothers, how do y'all not kill each other? That's exciting.
We've been doing this for a while, and what you don't see a lot of times.
We have very spirited conversations. Don't let that fool you.
All right.
So yeah, those come maybe off camera sometimes, but sometimes on camera. To be honest with you, sometimes they are out there for everybody to see.
And Mark's not afraid to say, and I disagree with you on this one.
That's fantastic. I think it's such a wonderful world we live in now, where instead of just bitching around the water cooler about what's wrong with the industry, get up and do something.
Yeah.
Show everybody how good you are, and if it's going to respond, it's going to respond. I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but at one point there were 3 million licensed agents and under 1 million homes for sale. Thinning the herd is the fastest, easiest way to do it, but we know that's not going to happen. So thank you so much for taking that one bite of this big elephant and helping people raise standards. Thanks so much for being here today, Dave.
Thank you, David. And we appreciate all you do, and we'd love to have you on sometime.
Hey, I would love to come on. Just get your sensors ready, because if we get going, I get pretty fired up.
All good. We love it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, I just wanted to tag this episode with a huge thanks to Brian and Mark, not just for coming on the podcast, but actually for being who they are, for being someone else out there that is looking to raise the standards of what's going on in the real estate industry. I hope that was motivational, inspirational for you to know that there's other people besides your cringy Uncle Dave looking out for you. We know that things are getting exciting here in 2025 for first-time home buyers, and we want to make sure that you have all the education so that you can feel empowered and you can realize that your dream is attainable. If you've got specific questions, howtobuyahome.com, drop me an ask question where it says Ask David, or you can just ask me directly for a unicorn. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please, if you got anything out of this, leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Just writing a couple sentences there is very helpful to get this message out to everyone. We want other people to hear this optimism and hope. Thanks so much, homies. As always, you can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyahome.com to get started.